In just a few hours, more witnesses are expected to testify in the Derek Chauvin trial. This comes after the defense called a forensic pathologist yesterday, and he told the jury that, in his opinion, the manner of George Floyd's death should be considered, quote, undetermined, rather than a homicide. For more analysis now, I want to bring in state and federal defense attorney Bernarda Villalona. She is also a former senior homicide prosecutor. Thank you so much for joining us. Okay, so for starters, what's your take on the defense's arguments so far?
So, as you can see, based on the testimony that took hours yesterday, the defense was trying to prove or show to the jury that the manner and cause of death wasn't a result of the actions of Derek Chauvin. For example, the manner of death that's usually classified, it has to be classified as a homicide for Chauvin to be found guilty of any of these homicide charges. In his opinion, it was undetermined. So based on it being undetermined, then Chauvin cannot be guilty as to any of the charges. Now, cause of death, which we have known from the very beginning that Eric Nelson was going to put George Floyd on trial and state that the cause of his death was a result of the ingestion of all the narcotics he had in his system, of his heart disease, as a result of all his other health conditions, which pretty much he said it was a toxic brew. And based on the toxic brew of all these medical conditions, he was a ticking time bomb and had a sudden death, and that was the cause. So everything but the knee to George Floyd's neck was the cause of death, according to this defense expert.
And so what was your take on his performance? Was he plausible? Do you think it's something that the jury could buy?
So you got to think, with the defense attorney, all the defense attorney and his goal is to plant one seed of reasonable doubt into the jury. If there is one seed of reasonable doubt, then the jury will have to come back with an acquittal on any of those charges, depending on where the reasonable doubt is actually planted. So when you're dealing with experts, it's the battle of the experts. Just because someone is an expert doesn't necessarily mean that you have to automatically believe them. The jury's going to have to determine whether they find Dr. Fowler credible. Do they find him believable? Based on his testimony yesterday, there were a couple of blunders that I believe that the jury is not going to find him credible because of that. For example, like he said that he could have died as a result of the carbon.
Yeah, I'm going to pause you. I'm going to pause you right there, because we actually have that sound. So I want to play it for the people who didn't hear it. But you're right. When he was kind of, had a long list of reasons as to why George Floyd could die. And one of them had to do with carbon monoxide, because he was being held close to the ground behind the squad car. Let's play some of that testimony.
There is exposure to a vehicle exhaust, so potentially carbon monoxide poisoning, or at least an effect from increased carbon monoxide in his bloodstream.
So when I had heard that, I thought, but if that is the case, the primary reason, the only reason he's being held there is because he has a knee on his neck. So it didn't seem like the right thing to bring up at the time. But then under cross-examination, you stated, because you called it a blunder.
It was a huge blunder and a failure by the defense, because a couple of reasons. Number one, that vehicle, it wasn't proven or shown that the vehicle was even turned on, number one. Two, that vehicle is a gas electric car. So the level of monoxide or the exhaust pipe actually exhibiting any kind of carbon monoxide is false. And then three, even if you think about it, it was a result of carbon monoxide, guess what? The only reason George Floyd is by that exhaust pipe is as a result of Derek Chauvin. So in the end, what the prosecution has to show, that the cause of the death was a result, substantially direct cause, was Derek Chauvin having a knee on George Floyd's neck. That's all the prosecution has to show.
So listen, based on what we've heard so far, and we're hearing that the defense may have maybe one more day of calling people to the stand. Do you think Derek Chauvin should testify?
Absolutely not. It is a wild card for Derek Chauvin to testify because in this case, he is subject, of course, to rigorous cross-examination. And let's not forget that Judge Cahill made a ruling at the beginning of this case that 2 of his prior bad acts, 2 of his use of forces in the past would come in. One where he hog-tied, allegedly, a female, and another one where he put someone in a prone position but was ultimately put in a recovery position. And it was told to him that but for the person being put in the recovery position, they would have died. So that goes to show knowledge and intent on that part. But Derek Chauvin, I don't think he'll survive cross-examination. Everything is on the video. You can't explain why you had your knee on the neck of George Floyd, a person that is unarmed, not resisting, not moving, and not a threat to you, still after he is unresponsive. And in reality, if you focus on his demeanor, he seems cold. At no point do you see that he's making eye contact with the witnesses during the trial. So we don't know how he'll come off. And they may just not like him.
So on the flip side, you pointed out something that's very basic, that the prosecution, they need a unanimous decision. They need to convince all of the jurors on the panel, and the defense only needs to convince one to get a hung trial. About the prosecution, is there anything that they should be doing to ensure that they win over every single juror?
So what they should be focusing on and should have been focusing on from the very beginning is the closing argument. Remember, as a trial attorney, you have to always be closing. So every question and answer should have a purpose that you're going to argue during your closing argument. So during the closing argument, what the prosecutor, whichever one of the prosecutors that are going to do the closing argument, they have to give that jury a guide. When you go back in that deliberation room, which is the courtroom, we want you to first, this is what you focus on. 1, what was the manner of death of George Floyd? 2, what was the cause of death? And did the prosecution prove that the cause of death was a substantial factor of Derek Chauvin's actions? Sure, we'll concede he had drugs in his system. He had heart issues. He had other issues regarding his health. But in the end, what was the primary factor? Because in the end, regardless of all those issues, George Floyd was alive prior to Derek Chauvin placing his knee on the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. So they're going to have to give him a guide, and from there make it easier for them to follow, give them direction, and make sure that they stay focused on what happened and focus that their eyes do not lie to them. And what they saw on the video is exactly what caused the death of George Floyd.
Bernarda Villalona, thank you so much. It's a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you for having me.